Commander Sarah Ghost Martinez crouched behind the twisted metal remains of what had once been a cargo transport. The acrid smell of burning electronics filled her nostrils as she checked her weapon's power cell. 12% remaining. Not ideal, but she'd worked with less. The war fleet had appeared in Earth's outer system 3 days ago, their sleek silver vessels cutting through space like deadly arrows. Their message had been simple and direct: surrender or face annihilation. Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet had been swept aside in the first engagement and outmaneuvered by technology centuries ahead of human capability. Now Sarah found herself in the belly of a command cruiser, alone and supposedly trapped. The irony wasn't lost on her that the aliens had specifically requested the capture of elite human soldiers for interrogation. They wanted to understand what made humans fight so fiercely when all logic suggested immediate surrender. Sarah adjusted her position as footsteps echoed through the corridor. 3 soldiers approached, their elongated forms moving with predatory grace. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. Their technology was impressive, but Sarah had noticed something crucial during her time aboard their ship. They relied entirely on their advanced equipment. The lead carried a weapon that hummed with lethal energy, its surface covered in glowing symbols that shifted like living text. His companions flanked him with military precision, but Sarah could see the subtle tells. They moved like soldiers who had never faced real adversity, never been forced to adapt when everything went wrong. "Human female," the lead alien spoke, his voice carrying an odd harmonic quality that made Sarah's teeth ache. "You will accompany us to the interrogation chamber. Resistance is futile given your primitive capabilities." Sarah slowly raised her hands, letting her rifle hang loose on its strap. The relaxed slightly, exactly as she'd hoped. In that moment of decreased vigilance, she struck. The first alien never saw the combat knife that appeared in Sarah's hand. Decades of training kicked in as muscle memory took control. She rolled forward, the blade finding the gap in his armor just below the helmet seal. Alien blood, thick and silver like mercury, splashed across the deck plating. His companions reacted with lightning speed, but Sarah was already moving. She grabbed the falling leader's weapon, feeling its weight and balance in a split-second assessment. The trigger mechanism was obvious enough, and she squeezed it while diving behind a support pillar. The energy discharge lit up the corridor like a miniature sun. The second's armor held for a moment before the concentrated plasma punched through, dropping him in a spray of sparks and alien screams. The third soldier had time to activate what looked like a communication device before Sarah's captured weapon found its mark. Silence fell over the corridor, broken only by the steady drip of cooling alien blood and the distant hum of the ship's engines. Sarah quickly stripped the weapons and equipment from the fallen soldiers, her trained hands working with mechanical efficiency. The alien's communication device was still active, alien voices chattering in rapid, musical tones. Sarah couldn't understand the language, but the urgency was universal. They knew something had gone wrong. She moved deeper into the ship, following the mental map she'd constructed during her initial capture. They had made a critical error in their arrogance. They'd given her a tour of their vessel, proud of their technological superiority, never imagining that a primitive human was memorizing every corridor, every junction, every potential weakness. The ship's design was elegant but impractical for close combat. Long, straight corridors with minimal cover, designed for beings who had never needed to consider guerrilla warfare. Wide spaces that allowed overlapping fields of fire. Junction points that could be easily defended by a single person who knew what they were doing. Sarah found the first security patrol 6 minutes later. 4 moving in perfect formation, their weapons scanning methodically. They never thought to look up. The ship's artificial gravity generators created interesting possibilities for someone trained in 3-dimensional warfare. Sarah had noticed the maintenance shafts running parallel to the main corridors, accessed through panels in the ceiling. It was a simple matter to position herself above the patrol and wait. The first alien died before he hit the ground. Sarah dropped from the ceiling like a falling shadow, her knife finding its mark with surgical precision. She rolled with the impact, coming up with his weapon already in her hands. The remaining 3 spun to face this new threat, but their formation worked against them in the confined space. Sarah's captured weapon discharged 3 times in rapid succession, each shot finding its target before they could properly respond. More alarm signals began echoing through the ship's corridors. They were starting to understand that they had a serious problem aboard their flagship. Sarah smiled grimly as she collected more weapons and equipment. They had no idea how serious the problem was about to become. The aliens had made another critical mistake in their assessment of human capabilities. They assumed that advanced technology automatically translated to superior tactics. They'd never encountered an enemy that could adapt and overcome through pure skill and determination. Sarah reached the ship's main computer core 20 minutes after her escape began. The chamber was massive, filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. The technology was beautiful and completely beyond human understanding, but Sarah hadn't come here to understand it. She'd come to destroy it. The emergency response teams were closing in from all directions, but they were too late. Sarah had already identified the core's power distribution network, and more importantly, its fail-safes. Every advanced system had them, automatic shutdowns designed to prevent catastrophic damage. The aliens had built their ships to be virtually indestructible from external attack, but they'd never considered what might happen if someone triggered those fail-safes from the inside. Sarah pulled the pins from the captured plasma grenades and began placing them with careful precision. She had exactly 3 minutes to reach the escape pods before the cascade failure reached critical mass. It would be tight, but Sarah had made deadlines under worse circumstances. The key was not to panic, not to rush, and to trust in her training. The Admiral stood before the tactical display in his flagship's command center, his silver-scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the readouts. The human female had been captured exactly according to plan, just another primitive specimen for their research division. Earth's defenders had proven laughably inadequate, their crude weapons and tactics no match for superiority. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, her harmonic voice carrying a note of confusion. "We're receiving multiple distress signals from detention level 7. Secondary eyes focused on the display showing his ship's internal security status. Several red indicators were flashing in the lower decks, but his attention was drawn to more pressing matters. The human governments had yet to respond to his ultimatum, and he was considering whether to begin orbital bombardment of their major population centers. "Probably the human attempting some futile escape," he said dismissively. "Increase security patrols in that sector. These creatures are known for their irrational behavior when cornered." The Admiral had studied the intelligence reports extensively. Humans were emotional, unpredictable, and prone to violence when threatened. They possessed no significant technology, and their military tactics were centuries behind standards. The fact that one had killed several guards was mildly interesting from a research perspective, but hardly concerning. His tactical officer, a younger with ambitious eyes, stepped forward. "Sir, perhaps we should deploy additional security teams. The humans' behavior patterns are more aggressive than our projections indicated." Made a dismissive gesture with his primary hands. "Commander, you worry too much. One primitive female cannot threaten a ship containing over 3,000 trained warriors. Our armor alone is proof against any weapon these creatures possess." The command center hummed with quiet efficiency as junior officers coordinated the fleet's operations. 12 massive war cruisers hung in perfect formation around Earth, their weapons trained on major population centers. The humans had 6 hours remaining to surrender unconditionally, after which the cleansing would begin. Had conducted 17 such operations during his career, each one following the same predictable pattern. Initial resistance, followed by desperate negotiations, and finally complete capitulation when the targeted species realized the futility of opposing might. Humans would be no different. A new alarm began sounding throughout the command center, this one carrying a higher pitch that indicated internal security breach. Frowned as more red indicators appeared on the ship's status display. The human was proving more troublesome than anticipated. "Admiral," the security chief called out, his voice tight with something approaching concern. "We've lost contact with patrol teams 7 through 11. Internal sensors are detecting weapons discharge in multiple compartments." "How many humans did we capture?" demanded. "Only one, sir, the female designated as a military specialist." The Admiral stared at the tactical display as more security alerts cascaded across the screen. 12 guard teams. Gone. eliminated by a single primitive human with no advanced technology and no support. It was impossible. "Deploy the hunter-killer squads," ordered. "Full tactical gear and maximum aggression protocols. I want this human terminated immediately." Commander hesitated. "Sir, our team specifically requested live specimens for their research. The human's unusual aggression patterns could provide valuable data. The research can proceed with the billions of other humans available on the planet below," the Admiral snapped. "This particular specimen has proven too dangerous to contain alive." The hunter-killer squads were elite warriors, equipped with the most advanced armor and weapons technology the Empire possessed. Their sensors could track individual heartbeats through solid metal, their weapons could punch through starship hulls, and their tactical coordination was flawless. 6 squads, 36 of the deadliest soldiers in the galaxy, hunting a single human female. It should have been over within minutes. The first squad reported contact near the ship's main computer core, then went silent. The second squad's final transmission was a garbled mix of weapons fire and what sounded like screaming. The third squad never even had time to report before their life signs vanished from the command center's displays. Watched in growing horror as his elite forces were systematically eliminated. The human wasn't just fighting, she was hunting. Moving through his ship like some kind of primitive predator, using tactics that all logical military doctrine. "How is this possible?" Commander whispered, staring at the security feeds. "She's using our own weapons against us. Our armor isn't stopping her attacks." The Admiral's hands trembled as more alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The computer core was showing massive instabilities, power fluctuations that suggested deliberate sabotage. The human hadn't just been killing his crew, she'd been systematically destroying his ship from within. "Evacuate the computer core level," ordered. "Seal all access routes and flood the area with paralytic gas." "Sir," the chief engineer interrupted, "the human has triggered cascade failures in the primary power distribution network. If those reach critical mass, the resulting explosion could destroy the entire ship." The command center fell silent except for the steady chorus of alarms. 3,000 warriors, the pride of the Imperial fleet, being threatened by a single human armed with nothing but captured weapons and primitive tactics. Had spent decades studying military history, absorbing the lessons of countless conquered species. He understood strategy, logistics, and the application of superior technology. What he'd never encountered was an enemy that could function effectively without any of those advantages. "Time to cascade failure?" he asked quietly. "Approximately 2 minutes, Admiral." Closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. He'd never lost a ship, never retreated from an inferior enemy, never faced a situation where all his training and experience proved inadequate. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "Prepare for emergency evacuation procedures." "Sir," Commander looked stunned. "We're abandoning the flagship because of one human." The Admiral opened his eyes and stared at the tactical display where a single red dot represented the human female moving steadily toward the escape pod bay. "Commander, I've just learned something about this species that our intelligence reports failed to mention. When cornered, humans don't follow logical behavioral patterns. They become something else entirely." The ship shuddered as the first explosions reached the primary reactor housing. Emergency lighting bathed the command center in crimson, and the deck began tilting as internal gravity fluctuated. "All hands abandon ship," announced over the ship-wide communication system. "This is not a drill." He watched the human's signal disappear from the sensors as she reached the escape pod bay. 30 seconds later, a small craft ejected from the dying flagship and began transmitting Earth military identification codes. The flagship, pride of the Imperial fleet and home to the most advanced technology in the galaxy, died with a flash of light that temporarily Earth's sun. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a single human in a stolen escape pod was heading home with intelligence that would change everything. Sarah's stolen escape pod tumbled through the void between Earth and the fleet, its primitive human systems struggling to decode the alien navigation interface. Behind her, the expanding cloud of debris that had once been their flagship painted brilliant streaks across the star field. She allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to appreciate the view before focusing on her next problem. 11 remaining enemy warships, each one capable of reducing Earth to radioactive slag. The pod's communication system crackled to life as it automatically connected to Earth's military networks. Sarah recognized the voice immediately: Admiral Harrison, commander of Earth's orbital defense forces and her former before she'd transferred to naval special warfare. "Ghost, is that really you?" Harrison's voice carried a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We saw the explosion, thought you were." "Not yet, sir," Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across the alien control interface as she tried to understand the captured technology. "But we've got bigger problems. I need immediate priority channel to Strategic Command. What I learned aboard that ship changes everything." "Sarah, we've got maybe 4 hours before they start bombing population centers. Whatever you discovered better be good news." Sarah smiled grimly as she finally cracked the pod's sensor array, revealing detailed scans of the remaining fleet. "Oh, it's better than good news, Admiral. It's the kind of intelligence that wins wars." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself in the most secure briefing room beneath NORAD, facing a collection of generals, admirals, and intelligence officials who looked like they hadn't slept in days. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General, sat at the head of the table with the kind of expression that suggested she was ready to authorize nuclear strikes if necessary. "Commander Martinez," General began, "you've got exactly 15 minutes to explain how destroying one alien ship is supposed to save our planet." Sarah activated the holographic display, showing detailed schematics of technology that she'd memorized during her time aboard the flagship. "Ma'am, the aliens made a critical error in their tactical assessment. They assumed that advanced technology automatically translates to superior military capability." "It doesn't," asked Admiral Harrison. "Not even close," Sarah replied. "Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming technological superiority. They've never faced an enemy that could operate without advanced equipment, never encountered guerrilla tactics, and most importantly, never dealt with soldiers trained to adapt and overcome under impossible circumstances." She manipulated the display, highlighting the fleet's formation patterns. "Look at their positioning. Perfect geometric spacing, overlapping fields of fire, textbook deep space naval tactics. It's exactly what you'd expect from a civilization that's won every war through technological dominance." General leaned forward. "What's your point, Commander?" "My point is that they're fighting the last war, not this one," Sarah explained. "Every ship is commanded by officers who have never faced a real challenge. They've never been forced to adapt when their primary systems fail, never learned to improvise when the situation goes beyond their training parameters." She pulled up the internal schematics of the warships. "Their vessels are marvels of engineering, but they're designed by beings who never considered the possibility of internal sabotage. Wide corridors, minimal security checkpoints, and centralized computer cores that can be reached by anyone who knows where to look." "You want to board their ships?" Admiral Harrison asked incredulously. "Sarah, they'll be ready for that now." "Will they?" Sarah challenged. "They just lost their flagship to a single human soldier armed with nothing but captured weapons and improvised tactics. Right now, their commanders are trying to understand how that's possible within their worldview of technological supremacy." The intelligence director, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, spoke up. "What exactly are you proposing, Commander?" Sarah's smile was predatory. "I'm proposing we give them something they've never encountered before, a military force that specializes in operating behind enemy lines with minimal equipment and maximum aggression. Every special operations soldier we've got, deployed simultaneously against their remaining ships." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General was the first to speak. "Commander, you're talking about sending our best people on what amounts to suicide missions." "No, ma'am," Sarah replied firmly. "I'm talking about sending our best people to do exactly what they were trained to do, operate in hostile territory against superior forces and complete missions that conventional wisdom says are impossible." She manipulated the display again, showing the detailed intelligence she'd gathered about weaknesses. "Their armor is sophisticated but designed for external threats. Close-quarters combat reveals gaps in coverage. Their weapons are powerful but require complex targeting systems that can be disrupted. Their soldiers are skilled but have never faced enemies who refuse to follow logical behavioral patterns." Admiral Harrison studied the tactical projections. "How many teams would we need?" Minimum insertion force would be 36 operators, Sarah calculated. 3 six-man teams per ship, with one team focused on destroying the ship's computer core, one team eliminating command staff, and one team securing escape routes. The logistics alone, General shook her head. How do we get them aboard without detection? Sarah pulled up her final piece of intelligence, detailed scans of the ship's sensor arrays. Their detection systems are optimized for large-scale threats, other warships, missile salvos, mass formations of fighter craft. They're not configured to track individual humans in EVA suits using passive approach vectors. She highlighted specific blind spots in the alien sensor coverage. Small infiltration teams, launched from multiple vectors during a coordinated distraction event, could reach their ships undetected. Once aboard, the same tactical principles that worked on the flagship apply to every vessel in their fleet. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs looked around the table at her colleagues. It's insane. Ma'am, Sarah said quietly, 3 days ago, the idea of a single human destroying an alien warship was insane. Sometimes insane is exactly what works against enemies who think they understand the rules of engagement. General was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical displays and considering the implications. Earth's conventional military had been swept aside like toys. Nuclear weapons were useless against ships that could simply retreat beyond the atmosphere. Surrender meant the complete subjugation of humanity. What do you need? She asked finally. Full tactical teams from SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, SAS, and every other Tier 1 Special Operations unit we can coordinate with our allies, Sarah replied. Equipment loads optimized for close combat and demolitions. And most importantly, commanders who understand that this mission requires throwing out every conventional rule of military engagement. Admiral Harrison looked skeptical. Sarah, even if this works, you're talking about coordinating the most complex special operations mission in human history with less than 4 hours of preparation time. Sarah's expression was stone-cold serious. Sir, 4 hours is a luxury. Some of the best missions in special operations history were planned in minutes and executed with nothing but improvised tactics and pure aggression. She gestured to the holographic display showing the fleet. These aliens think they understand warfare because they have superior technology. They're about to learn that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy isn't advanced engineering. It's a human soldier with nothing to lose and a mission to complete. General stood up, her decision made. Commander, you've got authorization for Operation Last Stand. Whatever resources you need, whatever personnel you want, whatever equipment is necessary, make it happen. As the briefing room emptied and military personnel rushed to coordinate the most desperate gamble in human history, Sarah stared at the tactical display showing 11 alien warships hanging in space above Earth. Each one was a fortress of advanced technology crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. In 3 hours, they would discover what happened when Technological Lieutenant Commander Jake, Reaper, checked his equipment one final time as the stealth insertion craft drifted silently toward the warcruiser designated Alpha 7. Around him, 5 other SEALs performed the same ritual, their movements economical and precise despite the obvious impossibility of their mission. 2 minutes to insertion, whispered Petty Officer through the team communication system. Alien vessel showing no indication of detecting our approach. Jake nodded, his mind running through the mission parameters one more time. 3-man teams hitting 11 ships simultaneously, each team tasked with reaching the computer core and triggering cascade failures in the primary power systems. The operation had been planned in 90 minutes and briefed in 30. By conventional military standards, it was guaranteed suicide. By special operations standards, it was Tuesday. Remember, Jake spoke quietly to his team, these aliens have never faced unconventional warfare. They think in terms of ship-to-ship combat and orbital bombardment. The concept of soldiers operating independently inside their vessels is completely outside their experience. Seaman First Class Mitchell, the youngest member of the team, looked nervous. Sir, what if Commander Martinez was wrong? What if they've adapted their security procedures after what happened to their flagship? Then we adapt faster, Jake replied simply. That's what we do. The insertion craft's pilot, a Army Special Operations aviator whose call sign was absolutely unprintable, announced their final approach. We are go for insertion. Remember, I'll be waiting exactly 23 minutes at the extraction point. Anyone who's late gets to find their own ride home. Jake smiled grimly as the craft's bay doors opened, revealing the massive bulk of the warship ahead of them. The vessel was beautiful in an alien way, its hull covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow in the starlight. More importantly, it showed no signs of detecting the tiny human craft approaching its blind spot. The EVA suit's thruster pack engaged with a barely perceptible vibration as Jake launched himself toward the enemy ship. Behind him, his team followed in perfect formation, 6 dark shapes against the star field, invisible to sensors designed to detect massive military formations. The alien hull was smooth as glass, but Jake's magnetic clamps found purchase on the underlying metal structure. He activated the plasma-cutting torch, its beam designed to slice through starship armor plating. The hull material resisted for exactly 4 seconds before yielding to human engineering and determination. "Breach complete," he reported, "beginning infiltration." The interior of the alien ship was exactly as Commander Martinez had described. Wide corridors designed for aesthetic appeal rather than defensive necessity, minimal security checkpoints, and no apparent consideration for the possibility of internal threats. Jake and his team moved like ghosts through passages lit by soft, pulsing illumination that cast strange shadows on the walls. "First patrol, 12 o'clock," whispered through the comm system. 3 soldiers moved down the corridor with mechanical precision, their attention focused on external scanner readouts displayed on portable devices. They never saw the humans who had pressed themselves into shadowed alcoves, never suspected that death was waiting silently in the darkness. The attack was over in seconds. 3 humans moved with lethal efficiency, their combat knives finding the gaps in alien armor that Sarah had identified during her reconnaissance. They died without making a sound, their advanced technology useless against opponents who struck from shadows and vanished before retaliation was possible. 3 down, Jake reported, continuing to primary objective. Similar reports were coming in from teams throughout the fleet. Delta Force had successfully breached the command cruiser designated Alpha 1 and was proceeding toward the bridge. SAS operators had infiltrated Alpha 4 and were systematically eliminating security patrols. Russian forces were painting alien corridors with silver blood as they carved their way through Alpha 9. The admiral, now commanding the fleet from Alpha 2 after the loss of his flagship, stared at his tactical displays in growing horror. Multiple ships were reporting internal security breaches, dead guards, and system malfunctions that suggested coordinated sabotage. "How many humans are aboard our vessels?" he demanded. "Current estimates suggest at least 30 individual infiltrators," his intelligence officer replied, her harmonic voice tight with stress. "They appear to be using tactics completely outside established military doctrine." Had never encountered anything like this in 40 years of military service. His ships were designed to fight other ships, not individual soldiers who moved through the corridors like hunting predators. His security forces were trained for boarding actions involving large enemy formations, not small teams that struck without warning and disappeared into the ship's infrastructure. "Deploy all available security personnel," he ordered. "Flood every corridor with armed patrols. These humans cannot hide forever." On Alpha 7, Jake's team had reached the ship's main computer core, a massive chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. The technology was beautiful and incomprehensible, but Jake hadn't come to admire alien engineering. "Charges placed," Petty Officer Williams reported. "Timer set for 15 minutes. "Confirmed," Jake replied. "Beginning extraction sequence." The withdrawal should have been routine, retrace their path to the entry point, and rendezvous with their extraction craft. Instead, they walked directly into a company-sized security force that had finally adapted to the human tactics. "Contact front," shouted as energy weapons began lighting up the corridor. The firefight was brutal and close range. Plasma rifles discharged with starbright flashes that left afterimages burned into human retinas. Human weapons, primitive by alien standards but devastatingly effective at point-blank range, answered with controlled bursts that found their targets with surgical precision. Jake dove behind a support pillar as alien energy blasts superheated the air around him. His team was pinned down, outnumbered 10 to 1, With 12 minutes remaining before their demolition, charges turned the alien ship into an expanding cloud of debris. "Reaper, this is Viper," came the voice of the Delta Force team leader from Alpha 1. "We are in heavy contact at our extraction point. Estimate 40 hostiles blocking our path to escape pods." "Copy, Viper," Jake replied while returning fire at an advancing soldier. "All call signs, be advised we are encountering increased resistance. Aliens have adapted faster than anticipated." Across the fleet, human special operations teams found themselves fighting desperate running battles through alien corridors. They had finally understood that they were facing an enemy that didn't follow conventional rules, and they were responding with overwhelming force. On Alpha 4, the SAS team found their escape route blocked by soldiers in powered armor that shrugged off small arms fire. On Alpha 9, operators were fighting hand-to-hand combat in zero gravity after alien defenders had disabled the artificial gravity in their sector. But the humans adapted too. That was what they did. Jake's team coordinator, Williams, had noticed something during the firefight. "Sir, these aliens coordinate their movements through those communication devices on their helmets. Take out the comm gear, and they lose tactical coordination." Jake smiled grimly as he aimed carefully at the communication array on the nearest's helmet. The human rifle round, primitive by galactic standards, punched through the sophisticated alien technology with satisfying finality. Suddenly, the coordinated alien advance became confused and disorganized. Without their technological coordination systems, the soldiers reverted to individual actions that human special operators could exploit. "All teams, priority target is alien communication equipment," Jake broadcast on the general frequency. "Disrupt their coordination, and they lose their primary tactical advantage." The tide of battle began to shift. Human soldiers, trained to operate independently and adapt to changing circumstances, pressed their attacks against aliens who suddenly found their technological superiority neutralized by something as simple as damaged communication gear. "Charges detonating in 3 minutes, warned. We need to be off this ship yesterday." Jake looked at the tactical situation one more time. His team was still outnumbered, but they had something the aliens didn't understand: the absolute refusal to quit when the mission was on the line. He said quietly, "We came here to blow up an alien warship. Let's finish the job." The final assault through the defensive line was everything that special operations training had prepared them for: violent, chaotic, and utterly decisive. Human soldiers moved like forces of Admiral watched his tactical display with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. 6 more ships had just disappeared from his formation, their death throes lighting up Earth's orbital space like artificial stars. In the span of 30 minutes, the pride of the Imperial fleet had been reduced from 12 mighty warships to 5 damaged vessels trying desperately to understand how primitive humans had achieved the impossible. "Admiral," his communication officer reported, her harmonic voice cracking with stress, "we're receiving surrender requests from our own security teams aboard Alpha 3 and Alpha 11. They're requesting immediate evacuation before the humans trigger their demolition devices." Stared at the words appearing on his display screen. Soldiers, elite warriors who had conquered 17 different species, were surrendering to humans armed with primitive kinetic weapons and improvised explosives. It was beyond comprehension. "Sir," his tactical officer added quietly, "Alpha 3 reports that their computer core has been compromised. They estimate cascade failure in approximately 8 minutes. The Admiral closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 40 years of military service crushing down upon him. He'd studied every major military engagement in galactic history, absorbed the tactical lessons of countless successful conquests, and built his career on the foundation of technological supremacy. None of his training had prepared him for enemies who simply ignored the rules. "Open a channel to the human military command," ordered quietly. "Sir," Commander looked stunned. "You heard me, Commander. Open the channel." The main display flickered as the communication system established contact with Earth's military networks. After a moment, a human face appeared on the screen, a middle-aged female wearing the insignia of high military rank. "This is General Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff," the human said. "I assume you're calling to discuss terms." straightened in his command chair, trying to maintain some dignity in what was rapidly becoming the most humiliating moment of his military career. "General, I am Admiral of the Imperial Fleet. Your soldiers have demonstrated capabilities that were not anticipated in our tactical assessments." "Admiral," General replied with what might have been a slight smile, "our soldiers have demonstrated exactly the capabilities they were trained to demonstrate. The question now is whether you want to discuss the terms of your withdrawal, or whether you'd prefer to continue losing ships to operators who are just getting warmed up." Another ship disappeared from tactical display as Alpha 3's computer core reached critical failure. The explosion was visible through the command center's observation ports, a brief flare of light that represented 3,000 years of engineering and 1,500 crew members. "What are your terms?" asked quietly. "Simple," General replied. "Immediate withdrawal of all forces from Earth's solar system, return of any human prisoners or casualties, and a formal guarantee that your government will not attempt future hostilities against Earth or its colonies." Considered his options. He still commanded 5 warships, each one capable of devastating Earth's surface. He could order orbital bombardment of major population centers, ensuring that humanity paid the price for their unexpected resistance. But he could also see the tactical reports flowing across his screens. Human infiltration teams were still operating aboard his remaining ships. His security forces were reporting contact with enemies who seemed to appear and disappear at will, striking with precision and ruthlessness that all logical military doctrine. More importantly, he was beginning to understand something fundamental about these humans that his intelligence reports had completely missed. They didn't fight according to established rules because they were primitives. They fought this way because it worked. "Admiral," his engineering officer interrupted, "Alpha 11 reports that humans have reached their engine compartment. They're threatening to trigger an antimatter containment breach that would destroy everything within 100,000 kilometers." Looked at General's image on his screen. "Your soldiers would destroy themselves just to eliminate one of our ships." "Admiral," the human general replied calmly, "our soldiers would detonate antimatter in their own faces if it completed their mission objectives. That's what makes them so effective against enemies who assume that self-preservation is a universal constant." Another alarm sounded as Alpha 5 reported internal explosions near their primary weapon systems. The humans weren't just destroying ships. They were systematically dismantling the fleet's ability to threaten Earth, even if some vessels survived. "We accept your terms," said finally. "Excellent," General replied. "Our operators will withdraw from your remaining ships once we confirm that all vessels are moving on vectors away from Earth. Any attempt to return or resume hostilities will be met with additional special operations responses." The communication channel closed, leaving alone with the wreckage of his military career and his understanding of galactic warfare. Around him, his bridge crew worked in stunned silence as they coordinated the withdrawal of the most powerful fleet in history. "Admiral," Commander asked quietly, "how do we report this to Imperial Command? How do we explain that we lost 7 warships to primitive humans using captured weapons and improvised tactics?" Watched through the observation ports as human extraction craft emerged from his remaining ships like parasites abandoning dying hosts. Each small vessel carried special operations teams who had just redefined the tactical parameters of galactic warfare. "We tell them the truth, Commander," he replied. "We encountered a species that fights wars we didn't know were possible. We learned that technological superiority means nothing against enemies who refuse to acknowledge its relevance." He gestured toward the expanding clouds of debris that marked the graves of 7 warships. "We discovered that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy isn't advanced engineering or superior firepower. It's a soldier who can complete impossible missions with primitive equipment and absolute determination." On Earth's surface, in the NORAD command center, General watched the fleet begin its withdrawal from Earth's solar system. Around her, military personnel were beginning to understand that they had just witnessed something unprecedented in human military history. "General," Admiral Harrison asked, "what happens when other alien civilizations learn about this engagement? When they discover that humans can defeat superior technology through unconventional tactics?" General smiled as she watched the last of the special operations teams return safely to Earth. Admiral, I suspect we're about to become very popular with species that have been conquered by technologically superior enemies, and very unpopular with the empires that have been doing the conquering. She gestured toward the tactical display showing the retreating alien fleet. Today, 36 human soldiers just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Every civilization that's been oppressed by technological supremacists now knows that there's another way to fight wars. Commander Sarah Martinez entered the command center, still wearing her EVA suit and carrying captured weapons. Ma'am, all teams have returned safely. Mission success across all objectives. Outstanding work, Commander, General replied. I have a feeling this is going to be the first of many such operations. Sarah smiled as she looked at the tactical display showing Earth surrounded by empty space, where an alien invasion fleet had once hung like a sword of destruction. Ma'am, I certainly hope so. Special operations teams have been waiting their entire careers for enemies who think technology is more important than tactics. As the fleet disappeared beyond the edge of Earth's solar system, carrying with them the news that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, Sarah was already planning the next phase of operations. There were other alien empires out there, other species who believed that advanced technology guaranteed military victory. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. In the depths of space, Admiral composed his final report to Imperial Command, trying to find words to describe how a single human soldier had destroyed his flagship, and 36 humans had shattered the most powerful fleet in history. He settled on a simple statement that would echo through galactic military academies for generations to come. We have encountered a species that treats impossible missions as routine training exercises. Recommend immediate revision of all tactical doctrines regarding human military capabilities. The age of technological supremacy in galactic warfare had ended. The age of human special operations had just begun nature through alien defenders who had finally realized that advanced technology meant nothing against enemies who simply refused to be stopped. 2 minutes later, Jake's team was racing through the ship's corridors toward their extraction point as the demolition charges reached zero. Behind them, the computer core was experiencing cascade failures that would turn their mighty warship into just another expanding cloud of debris in Earth's orbit-met human stubbornness armed with explosives and bad attitudes. The corridor leading to the escape pod bay was crawling with security forces. Sarah could hear them coordinating their search patterns, their harmonic voices creating an almost musical backdrop to her tactical planning. They were thorough and professional, but they were hunting for a human who fought like no enemy they'd ever encountered. Sarah checked the timer on her improvised explosive device. 2 minutes 30 seconds, time to move.